Maya had always been the kind of person who believed that love meant accepting everything about someone, the good parts and the difficult parts, the charming mornings and the frustrating habits, the big romantic gestures and the small everyday carelessness. She had grown up watching her parents navigate 25 years of marriage with patience and humor and a generosity of spirit that she had always admired and always intended to carry into her own relationships. But nobody had told her about the bathroom countertop. Maya was 24 and lived with her older sister Nadia in a small but beautiful apartment in the city. Nadia was 28 and brilliant, in the middle of her medical specialization, working hours that left her barely present in the apartment they shared. Maya did not mind the chores. She genuinely did not mind doing all of it, the cooking and the cleaning and the organizing, because the apartment was their home and she took pride in keeping it well. What she minded with a quiet and growing intensity that surprised even herself, was when that work was not respected. Nadia had a boyfriend named Carlos. Carlos was warm and funny and clearly adored Nadia, which Maya respected completely. But Carlos had a habit that drove Maya to the very edge of her considerable patience. Every single time Carlos used the bathroom sink, he left the entire countertop soaking wet. Not slightly damp. Not a few drops that a reasonable person might overlook. Completely, thoroughly, inexplicably wet, as though the sink had decided to share its contents with every available surface in the vicinity. Sometimes the floor was wet too. Maya would walk into the bathroom after Carlos had used it and stand there for a moment in a state of pure bafflement, genuinely unable to understand the physics of how one person using one sink could produce this level of widespread moisture. She tried the reasonable approach. She spoke to Nadia calmly and clearly, explaining the situation without drama, asking simply that Nadia mention to Carlos that drying the countertop after using the sink would be appreciated. Nadia listened and then, with the particular exhaustion of someone who had been at the hospital for 14 hours and did not have energy for household diplomacy, said that Carlos had ADHD and would just forget anyway, so there was not much point. Maya stood in the kitchen after that conversation and felt something shift inside her. Not dramatically. Not in the way of someone about to do something explosive or confrontational. More in the way of someone who has decided, quietly and with complete calm, that if the problem was not going to be solved by conventional means, she was going to have to find her own solution. The next time she walked into the bathroom and found the countertop wet, she looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at Nadia's towel hanging neatly on the rack. Then she picked up Nadia's towel and dried the countertop with it. It was, she would later admit to herself, an extremely petty thing to do. It was also, she discovered, enormously satisfying. There was something about the act that released a pressure she had not known was building. She was not hurting anyone. She was not starting a war. She was simply redirecting a consequence to someone slightly more able to address the source of the problem than Maya herself was. If Nadia was going to allow the mess, Nadia could be the one whose towel dealt with it. Weeks passed. Maya continued her small private act of household justice. Nadia never mentioned it. Carlos continued to leave the countertop wet with what appeared to be supernatural consistency. The towel continued to be employed in its new unofficial capacity. And then one evening something unexpected happened. Carlos arrived at the apartment earlier than usual, while Maya was in the kitchen making dinner and Nadia was still at the hospital. He stood awkwardly in the doorway for a moment and then asked if he could help with anything. Maya looked at him. He looked genuinely uncertain, the kind of uncertain that suggested he was aware that something between them was not quite right even if he could not identify exactly what it was. She handed him a knife and pointed at the vegetables. They cooked together in relative silence for a while. And then Carlos said, without particular preamble, "I know I'm not the easiest person to live around sometimes. I want you to know I'm aware of that." Maya looked at him sideways. "The countertop," she said. He winced. "The countertop. Every time. I know. I genuinely do not know how it happens. My brain just does not register it." He paused. "I'm not using that as an excuse. I know it's frustrating. Maya stirred the pot for a moment. Put a small towel on the counter. Your own towel. Specifically for drying. Make it a visual cue instead of trying to remember. Carlos looked at her with the expression of someone who has just been given a solution so simple and so obvious that they cannot believe they did not think of it themselves. That would actually work, he said. I know, said Maya. He bought a small hand towel the next day and hung it on a hook